Hey everyone, welcome back to another online IELTS lesson. Today we'll be looking at IELTS speaking. We're going to learn some strategies and practice some speaking questions during the lesson. And this lesson also contains some good phrases and connectors that can help you in your part 2 and part 3 of the speaking exam. So if you're ready, let's begin. In part 2 and part 3 exam, you're required to express a preference while you're answering the question. Yeah, sometimes you have to narrate. You always have to compare and contrast things, suggest solutions to problems, and express your opinions, justify your opinions, speculate something, analyzing things, summarizing your ideas, and also conversion repair. And in the next pages, try to imagine every possible part of the question in your head and answer questions like what, when, where, why, and how. Speaking strategy number 4, memorable starts. While you're describing things in speaking part 2, you should get your talk off to a memorable start with something on the line. For example, when you're describing something that is valuable to you, you can use these kind of phrases, starter phrases, such as, if I was about to lose everything and could only save one thing, it would be my... Or, I've got several things that mean a lot to me, but the one that really stands out is my... Now let's take a look at some more starter phrases on the next slide. Here are some more phrases, starter phrases. These are for expressing a preference. Now let's take a look at each of them one by one. I prefer A to B because, or if I have a choice, I will. If I had a choice, I would. For me, A is much more attractive than B, or much more interesting than B, much more preferable than B, because, and then you give the reason. I would much rather do A than B, or I would much rather eat A than B. So you can use a variety of verbs when you are talking about your preference of something. We have a topic here, part 2 question for expressing a preference. Now let's take a look at these questions. Describe a place you have visited that you have fond memories of. You should say where this was, why you went there, what you did there, and what it was about the place that makes it so memorable. You know the time to think and also the time you need to spend to give your answer. So I'd like you to use those connectors and starter phrases you have just learned in the previous slides while you're answering to these questions. Now, can you think of your own answer to these questions? You can also do it later after you finish watching this video, and after you finish giving your own answer, I'd like you to listen to the recording of yourself. I'd advise you to record yourself and listen to it afterwards, and write down or type any errors in pronunciation, grammar, or vocabulary that you hear in your answer. So this is how you basically make progress. This is how you basically get better in English while you're preparing for your IELTS exam. This is another topic for expressing a preference. You can also do your own practice for your question. It's about describing your favorite personal possession. So you can also practice to give your own answer to this question later, and after you finish, again you have to record yourself while you're speaking and listen to it afterwards and check your errors in pronunciation, grammar, or vocabulary. Next, narrating something. Starter phrases for narrating things. Here we have different phrases that you can use while you're narrating a story. Let's start reading them one by one. When I was a high school student, I went to Guizhou to visit some friends. After I graduated from high school, so you can see some of the linkings here that are used to link two compound sentences such as when or after. During my visit to Guizhou last year, I did something. Last year during the Spring Festival, I went to Guizhou to visit some friends. You can also use some more phrases like whenever or while. Some more starter phrases for narrating a story, for telling a story. These are basically the time phrases and also the prepositions there. So here we have part 2 question, narrating a story. This is about describing a well-known person. You should say who she or he is, what makes that person famous, and why you admire that person. So while you're describing that person, a famous person, there are times when you need to narrate a story. And while you're practicing to answer these questions, I'd like you to use those phrases you have learned earlier for narrating a story. Here below we have speaking part 3 questions. As you know, the questions for speaking part 2 are usually similar to the topic in part 2 of the exam. So you can also use the same phrases while you're answering these questions as well. So here are some questions, some different questions. Do you want to become famous? How to become a well-known person in your country? And what kind of people can become famous in your country? What are the advantages and disadvantages of being famous? What do you think of the privacy of a well-known person? Now let's move on to the next pages. And again, after you finish your answer, you have to check your recording of your answer to check your errors in pronunciation, grammar, and vocabulary. Using natural connectors to tell stories. So here we have some connectors. Let's check them one by one. First, we have although or even though. These connectors are really helpful when you're comparing and contrasting things. Here's an example. Although my hometown is very small, it has many interesting places to visit. Even though my hometown very crowded and noisy, I like living there very much. Another good thing about my job is, and then you give the reason. Another way to solve the problem would be to do something. Number 3, at the same time. I wanted to be with her every day. At the same time, I felt I should obey my parents' wishes. There are too many cars in Beijing. At the same time, the city is building more subway lines and adding more buses. Connectors application time, practice time. Let me give you a task to use those connectors you've learned earlier. Number 1, describe what kind of jobs you have had over the past decade. Use before or after that. Number 2, describe 3 good things about your current job. Use these phrases, these connectors, another, besides, and in addition. Number 3, describe a negative and positive point relating to your job. Use these phrases, these connectors. Number 4, describe a time when you were in a tough position at work. Use at the same time. Try to use this in your answer. It's okay to make even 2 or 3 sentences. The main thing is to practice using these connectors in your answers. So eventually you will automatically apply these connectors in your speech, in your answers in the future. Describing celebration and leisure time. This is also a good topic for you to apply some of those connectors we've learned in our today's lesson. Let's take a look at this speaking part 2 question. Describe a traditional festival in your country. And also we have discussion questions for speaking part 2, similar to this is for part 3, and it's similar to part 2 questions. And again, don't forget to record yourself and check your recording after you finish your answer, to check your errors in different aspects: pronunciation, grammar, and vocabulary. Some more connectors here, but however, yet these are the first group. You can check the phrases used with these connectors by yourself. I'm just going to look at the main connector, main rubric of these group. The second one is rather than, next one is when or whenever, and the next is for example, because, the reason is. I'd like you to check these phrases made with these connectors by yourself, because these are really helpful in any part of the speaking questions. For the connectors application, I'd like to give you this task. Disagree with this statement. A huge increase in tourism is a positive thing for this country because it will help the economy. So I'd like you to give your disagreement with this question and use these connectors in your answers. Number 2, describe a time when you had to go against the crowd and do something different than everyone else was doing. And I'd like you to use rather than or except for in your answer. Number 3, should husbands and wives have different roles within the family? Use when in your response. Number 4, describe a time when you were in a tough position at work and had a problem and you didn't know what to do. Use at the same time. Alright everyone, this is the end of our today's lesson. I hope the strategies and the connectors that you've learned today were helpful. I'd like you to keep using these kind of connectors and phrases in your answers in speaking, because basically these are the things that get you a good score in speaking exam. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.